So what is Flutter and why would you want to use it? Flutter itself is a framework that allows you to target multiple platforms with a single code base. That means you can build your app once and then deploy it to multiple platforms like the Google Play Store for Android, the Apple App Store for iOS, and you can now also target the web and desktop. But those platforms are currently in alpha, so this course will be focused on iOS and Android. Now, there's a lot of other tools and frameworks out there that solve the same problem, things like React Native, Ionic, Xamarin, and many others. So that begs the question, what makes Flutter special compared to these alternatives? In my opinion, there are two main things that really make Flutter stand out. That's the developer experience and performance. Let's first talk about the developer experience. When you build a Flutter app, you're going to write it in the Dart programming language. Now, as a JavaScript developer, that was initially a turnoff for me, because learning any new language is going to take some time and effort, and Dart is not exactly the most common language in the world. But what you'll find is that Dart is very approachable if you're a JavaScript developer, or if you have any experience with a C-style language like Java or C# or anything like that. We'll learn a lot about Dart as we go through this course, but I also recommend watching my video on Dart for the JavaScript developer, especially if you're a web developer. The reason Dart is so good is that it provides amazing developer tooling, so a lot of the code that you write will just be like writing code on autopilot. You'll get inline documentation and IntelliSense and VS Code, and you'll just be able to catch errors before they become a problem in your app. And this is compounded by the fact that Flutter has a ton of built-in widgets with awesome documentation. Once you get familiar with Dart and Flutter's built-in widgets, you'll be able to iterate and prototype very quickly. In my opinion, this offers a big advantage over React Native and NativeScript, where you have to roll out a lot of your own widgets from scratch. Or you have to rely on a lot of third-party dependencies, which can get very hard to maintain as your app grows in complexity. Now, the other huge advantage that Flutter offers is performance. It's able to render graphics at 60 to 120 frames per second consistently because it's implemented its own C++ engine with the Skia graphics library. And that basically gives you a blank canvas to render your own graphics in a highly performant way, very similar to how a game engine works. Now, another really cool thing about Dart is that it can be compiled just in time or ahead of time. When it's compiled ahead of time, it's a binary that does not require a VM to run because there's no interpreted code. This gives it yet another performance advantage over frameworks that require a JavaScript bridge. But when Dart is compiled just in time, we can use it during development to do things like hot reload, which dramatically improve the developer experience as well. Now, before you go and decide to build your app with Flutter, there are also some disadvantages to consider as well. When compared to JavaScript, the Dart and Flutter ecosystem is still very small, but it's growing very rapidly and shows no signs of slowing down. However, it still might be difficult to find the right packages or the right talent to get your app shipped to production. And the other disadvantage is that not every single native platform feature is supported. If you plan on working very closely with native features that might only be available on iOS or Android, you should definitely analyze those closely to make sure that Flutter can meet those needs. You can implement your own custom native code using platform channels in Flutter, but it still might make more sense to just build a true native app if you have a lot of low-level features that you need from the platform. Now, my experience with Flutter has been extremely positive. Flutter apps look beautiful, they're easy to maintain, and they provide a lot of flexibility over how you architect the app. At the end of the day, you always want to weigh the trade-offs for whatever solution you go with, but I think you'll be pretty impressed with Flutter by the end of this course.